Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the strangest message of his life arrived at Earth's orbital station. The signal came from deep space, farther than any human ship had ever traveled. The computer struggled to decode it, but when the translation finally appeared on his screen, Jake nearly dropped his cup. "Greetings, humans of Earth. We are the Galactic Survival Council. We invite your species to join the Great Trial." Jake stared at the words. First contact with aliens was supposed to be handled by diplomats and scientists, not a simple space station captain. But here he was, reading an invitation from creatures he had never imagined existed. The message continued. "Every 100 years we test the strongest species in our galaxy. 6 members from each race must survive 30 days on the world of Kethra Prime. No technology is allowed. Only knowledge and natural materials may be used. Most species fail. We expect humans will also fail, but we are curious to see how quickly." Jake felt his jaw tighten at the casual insult. These aliens thought humans would fail fast. They were in for a surprise. If you accept, send your best team to the coordinates below. The trial begins in 7 days. Reply within 24 hours, or we will assume you are too afraid to compete.
Oh.
The message ended with a list of rules that made Jake's eyes widen. No weapons, except what they could make by hand. No communication. Devices. No medical equipment. No protective suits. Nothing but the clothes on their backs and whatever they could remember or figure out. Jake immediately called Earth Command. Within hours, the most important people on the planet were arguing about whether to accept. Some wanted to say yes to show human courage. Others worried it was a trap. A few suggested sending diplomats instead of soldiers. "With respect, sir," Jake said during the video conference, "this isn't a job for diplomats. They want our best survivors, not our best talkers. And they're expecting us to fail fast. I say we show them what humans can really do." Admiral Ross leaned forward on the screen. "You think we should accept this challenge, Captain?"
Yes, sir.
"And I think I know who should go." Jake had been thinking about this since the message arrived. He needed a team that could handle anything without modern technology. It's not necessarily the strongest or smartest people, but the most adaptable. Want Lisa Grant from the Demolitions Unit? She knows how to work with explosives, but more importantly, she understands how things break and how to control destruction. That knowledge works the same way with or without modern tools. Admiral Ross nodded. "Who else?" "Pete Collins from the Survival Training School. He teaches our soldiers how to live off the land. If anyone can handle primitive conditions, it's him." "Amy Rodriguez from the Medical Corps. She knows field medicine and natural remedies." "Ben Harper from Engineering. He builds things, and he understands how basic machines work." "Kate Sullivan from the Wilderness Guide program. She knows how to read land and weather and animals." "You two lead them?" "Yes, sir. I've commanded teams in hostile environments. This is just another hostile environment." The decision came back 6 hours later. Earth would accept the challenge. Jake had 3 days to assemble his team and convince them to risk their lives for a planet they had never heard of. Lisa Grant was the first person he called. She was working in her lab when the secure line rang. "You want me to do what?" she asked after Jake explained. "To survive on an alien planet with no technology for 30 days while competing against alien species that think we're going to die quickly." Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. "When do we leave?" Pete Collins had a similar reaction. "No guns, no radios, no GPS, no medical kit. Just like the old days, except with aliens trying to kill us instead of enemy soldiers." Count. Me and Amy Rodriguez was more cautious. "What if someone gets seriously injured? What if there are diseases we've never seen before? Then you'll have to figure out how to treat them with whatever plants and materials you can find," Jake said. "Just like doctors did for thousands of years before modern medicine." Amy thought about it. "It would be interesting to see what I could do with just basic knowledge and natural materials." "Okay, I'm in." Ben Harper was excited before Jake finished explaining. "You mean I get to build things from scratch? No computer designs, no manufactured parts, just raw materials and basic physics? This sounds like the best engineering challenge." ever. Kate Sullivan asked the most practical questions. What's the climate like? What kind of terrain? What animals might we encounter? Shh. We don't know any of that, Jake admitted. We'll have to figure it out when we get there. Kate grinned. That's the fun part. Yes, I'll do it. The team met for the first time 2 days before departure. Jake watched them work together during a brief planning session and felt confident in his choices. These people didn't panic when faced with unknown challenges. They got excited. On the day they left Earth, news reports called them heroes. Others called them fools. Jake didn't care about either opinion. He cared about the message from the Galactic Council that had arrived that morning. 12 species will compete in this trial. The current champions are the Draconis Republic. They have won the last 3 competitions. They are eager to see how quickly the primitive humans surrender. Primitive humans. Jake smiled as their ship approached the coordinates. These aliens were about to learn that humans had been surviving in hostile environments for millions of years. They had been doing it since before they invented fire, tools, or language. And now they were about to show the galaxy what primitive really meant. The ship dropped out of hyperspace near a green and blue planet that looked almost like Earth, except for the 3 moons hanging in the sky. Kethra Prime, their new home for the next 30 days. Jake looked at his team. They were checking their simple clothes and basic supplies one last time. No fear in their eyes, only curiosity and determination. Ready to show these aliens what humans can do, he asked. Ready, sir? They replied together. The challenge was about to begin. The transport ships dropped all 72 competitors onto Kethra Prime at sunrise. Jake Morrison hit the ground running, literally. While other teams stood around looking confused by the alien forest, Jake was already moving his people toward higher ground. Double quotes, Kate. What do you see? He called to his wilderness guide. Kate Sullivan was scanning the landscape like she had done this 1,000 times before. Fresh water that way, about half a mile. Wind patterns suggest weather changes. Every few hours. Those trees have fruit, but I need to test if it's safe for humans. Good hunting trails through the valley. The other teams were still trying to figure out which direction was north. Jake watched a group of tall, lizard-like aliens arguing in clicks and hisses. These had to be the Draconis Republic, the current champions. Their scales gleamed in the sunlight, and they moved with the confidence of winners. But they kept looking around like they expected someone to hand them instructions nearby. A team of crystal-like beings stood perfectly still. Jake guessed these were the Vorthok. They seemed to be communicating through light patterns that flashed across their bodies. Beautiful, but they looked completely lost without their technology. Pete, we need fire and shelter. Lisa, start looking for materials we can use for tools and weapons. Amy, check those plants Kate mentioned. Ben, find us some good rocks and wood. Move fast, people. We have work to do. While the human teams scattered to their tasks, Jake kept watching the other competitors. A group of energy beings floated around aimlessly. Several teams of various alien species sat down and seemed to be having long discussions about what to do first. The humans had been working for 30 minutes. When Pete Collins got their first fire started, he had used a bow drill method that he could do in his sleep. The smoke rose straight up in the still air, and suddenly every alien on the planet was staring at them. How did they do that so quickly? Jake heard one of the Draconis hiss. Ben Harper was already shaping rocks into basic tools. His engineering mind understood that every complex machine started with simple principles. A sharp rock was just a very basic cutting tool. A stick was a lever. Put them together right, and you could build anything. Amy Rodriguez had found several plants that looked similar to Earth species she knew. She was testing them carefully, starting with small amounts. Her medical training taught her to be cautious, but also to experiment when necessary. Lisa Grant was doing something that fascinated the alien observers. She was gathering specific types of rocks and arranging them in careful patterns. Her demolition knowledge told her exactly how things broke apart and how to control that breaking. She was building what looked like a primitive quarry. Kate Sullivan returned from her scouting with news. 3 different water sources within walking distance. 2 types of small game animals that don't seem afraid of us yet. Fruit trees that are probably safe based on what local animals are eating, I found. Clay deposits by the river. Clay? Ben asked, suddenly very interested. Good clay. The kind you can make things with. Jake smiled. His team was already thinking like engineers and builders. It's not just survivors. By noon, the humans had accomplished more than most alien teams managed in their first week of previous competitions. They had fire, basic tools, a water source, and the beginning of a permanent camp. The Draconis team approached them carefully. Their leader, a massive reptile with golden scales, spoke in surprisingly good English. I am Commander Zektar. You are the humans. That's right. I'm Captain Jake. Morrison, we have been watching your progress. It's unexpected. How did you make fire so quickly? Pete Collins looked up from where he was preparing their second fire pit. Friction method. Bow drill. You rub dry wood together fast enough, and it gets hot enough to start burning. Zektar stared at him. You make fire by rubbing wood? Sure. Humans have been doing it for thousands of years. Want me to show you? The Draconis commander looked embarrassed. My people developed energy weapons 10,000 years ago. We have not made fire with our hands since then. No problem, Pete said cheerfully. Fire is fire. Doesn't matter how you make it as long as it works. Jake watched this exchange with interest. The aliens weren't stupid or weak, they were just out of practice. They had become so dependent on advanced technology that they had forgotten basic skills. Amy Rodriguez had figured out which plants were safe and was already preparing a meal that smelled amazing. The scent drew attention from teams all across the valley. What is that smell? Asked a floating energy being that had drifted over to their camp. Dinner, Amy replied. Want to try some? I made extra. The energy being somehow managed to look confused. You are sharing food with competitors? Jake stepped forward. Why not? There's plenty of food here if you know how to find it. There's no reason we can't all eat well. This seemed to break the aliens' understanding of how the competition worked. Out. It floated away, flashing rapidly in what Jake assumed was intense communication. With its teammates, Ben Harper had started construction on something that looked like a cross between a shelter and a workshop. He was using Kate's clay, Pete's fire, and Lisa's carefully broken rocks to create tools that were already more sophisticated than anything the other teams had managed. As the sun started to set, Jake looked around at what his team had accomplished in one day. They had a fire that would burn all night, shelter that would keep them dry, clean water and prepared food, basic tools and weapons. It's the foundation of a permanent camp. More importantly, they had something the alien teams seemed to lack: confidence. His people weren't worried about surviving 30 days. They were already planning improvements for day 2. The Galactic Council observers were having heated discussions among themselves. Jake could see them pointing at the human camp and arguing. They had expected the humans to struggle like all the other teams. Instead, the humans were thriving. Commander Zektar approached their fire as darkness fell. Captain Morrison, I must ask you something. Do all humans know these skills?
Most of us.
Learned some of them as children, Jake replied. We call it camping. Or hiking. Or just playing outdoors. Why? Because Zektar said slowly, I begin to think that your species has advantages that we never considered. You call yourselves primitive, but you may be the most advanced survivors in the galaxy. Jake looked at his team sitting around their warm fire, planning tomorrow's projects, sharing stories and laughing. They looked like they were on vacation, not fighting for their lives in an alien survival competition. Maybe Zektar was right. Maybe being primitive was actually the most advanced thing you could be. By the end of the first week, Kethera Prime had shown its teeth. 3 alien teams had already lost members to the planet's dangers. The nights brought creatures that hunted in packs, their eyes glowing green in the darkness. The days brought territorial disputes as teams competed for the best water sources and hunting grounds. Jake. Morrison watched from his team's lookout post as 2 groups of aliens fought over a fruit grove. The battle was ugly and desperate. Neither side knew how to fight without their energy weapons, so they just grabbed rocks and swung wildly. Several aliens were badly hurt, and the winners were too exhausted to actually gather the fruit they had fought for. Wasteful, Kate Sullivan said, joining Jake at the observation point. There are 6 other groves within a mile of here. Fighting over nothing? They don't know that, Jake replied. They can't read the land like you can. The human camp had grown into something that impressed even Jake. Ben Harper had built a workshop where he created increasingly complex tools. His latest project was a water wheel that powered a grain mill. Lisa Grant had used controlled explosions to dig a proper well and create terrace gardens. Pete Collins had established a smoking house for preserving meat and fish. Amy Rodriguez had become the unofficial doctor for half the planet. Aliens came to her camp every day seeking treatment for injuries, infections, and illnesses. She had learned to work with local plants and had created a medicine kit that worked better than anything the other teams had. Jake, Amy called from her medical area. I need to talk to you. Jake found her treating a wounded Vorthok whose crystal body had been cracked in a fall. The crystal being was pulsing with dim light, obviously in pain. What's the problem? Jake asked. It's not a problem, exactly. It's an opportunity. This is Veltar, and he's been telling me about the other teams. They're not just struggling with survival, they're starting to fight each other for resources. Fighting. How? Veltar's voice sounded like wind chimes in a breeze. The Nexari team attacked the Luminari yesterday. They wanted their water source. Luminari fought back, but they are not warriors. 3 of them were badly hurt. Jake frowned. 10 teams started with full members. Now only 7 teams have all 6 members alive. The Draconis team lost 1 member to the Night Hunters 3 days ago. The Quallen team lost 2 members to the poisonous plants. The Helix team lost 1 member to the Acid Rain. Acid Rain? Amy nodded grimly. It happens every few days. It burns right through skin if you're not protected. We've been lucky so far. But our luck might not hold. Jake thought about this. The competition was turning deadly, and not because of the planet's natural dangers. The real threat was the desperate aliens who were fighting each other instead of working together. What do you think we should do? He asked his team. Help them, Pete said immediately. We've got more than enough resources to share. And if they keep fighting each other, they're all going to die. That's not our problem, Lisa pointed out. This is supposed to be a competition. We're supposed to be trying to win, are we? Ben asked. What does winning actually mean here? Being the last team alive? Or proving that humans can survive anything? Jake looked around at his team. They had been on Cathra Prime for 8 days, and they looked healthier than when they had arrived. Their camp was more comfortable than some military bases he had seen. They had solved every problem the planet had thrown at them. Kate, what do you think? Kate was quiet for a moment. I think we've already won. We've proved that humans can not only survive here, but thrive. The question is, what we do with that victory. Commander Morrison, a new voice called from outside their camp. May I speak with you? Jake turned to see Commander Zektar approaching with what was left of his Draconis team. The proud reptilian warriors looked tired and hungry, but their scales had lost their shine and their movements were slow. Of course, Commander, what can I do for you? I come to ask for help. My team is ... struggling. We have not eaten well in 3 days. Our fire keeps going out. The Night Hunters killed our scout, Ractor. Jake felt his team tense up behind him. This was unprecedented. The former champions were asking their competitors for help. What kind of help do you need? Food, shelter, protection from the hunters? In exchange, we offer our knowledge of the other teams and our fighting skills. Jake considered this. What do you know about the other teams? The Nexari have fortified themselves in the eastern caves, but they are running out of food. The Luminari are hiding in the crystal formations, but they cannot make fire and are slowly starving. The remaining Quallen team has good shelter, but no clean water. The Helix team has water and fire, but no defense against the Night Hunters. They're all dying slowly, Amy said quietly. Yes, Zektar agreed. We all are, except for you humans. You have everything we need to survive, and you seem to get stronger every day. Jake made his decision. Ben, how fast can you expand our shelter to house more people? Give me 2 days and I can double our capacity. But Jake, are you sure about this? I'm sure, Commander Zektar. Here's my offer. We'll help you and any other team that wants to work with us instead of against us. But there are conditions. Name them. No more fighting between teams. No more territorial disputes. Everyone contributes what they can to the group effort. And everyone learns basic survival skills so this doesn't happen again. Zektar looked at his remaining team members. They nodded quickly. Agreed. When do we start? Right now. Pete, show them how to maintain a fire. Amy, check their health and treat any problems. Lisa, teach them how to gather food safely. Kate, explain how to read weather patterns. Ben, put them to work on expanding our defenses. As the Draconis team integrated into the human camp, Jake watched the other struggling teams in the distance. Word would spread quickly about what was happening here. Soon he expected they would have more visitors. The competition was changing. Instead of being about which species could survive alone, it was becoming about which species was smart enough to work together. And Jake was starting to realize that maybe that had been the real test all along. The Galactic Council observers were very quiet these days. They watched the human camp growing larger and more organized, and they watched the remaining independent teams growing weaker and more desperate. Jake had a feeling that the great trial was about to become something completely different from what anyone had expected. The warning came from Kate Sullivan at dawn on day 21. She had been watching the sky for 3 hours, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Jake, we need to move everyone now. Jake Morrison looked up from the morning planning meeting. The human camp now housed 43 beings from 8 different species. What had started as a survival competition had become something like a small town, with humans teaching aliens everything from fire-making to food preservation. What's wrong? Jake asked. Kate pointed at the horizon. See those clouds? There. Moving in 3 different directions at once, and they're all heading here? I've never seen a storm system like this, but if I had to guess, I'd say we're about to get hit by the worst weather this planet can throw at us. Commander Zektar looked up from where he was helping Ben Harper repair a water filter. How bad? Bad. Enough to kill everyone who doesn't have perfect shelter, Kate replied. Those clouds are dark green. That usually means acid rain. And the wind patterns suggest we might get lightning, flooding, and high winds all at the same time. Jake felt his stomach drop. They had 43 people to protect, and most of them were species that had never faced a real survival challenge before. The human camp was well built, but it wasn't designed for the kind of storm Kate was describing. How long do we have? He asked. Maybe 8 hours before it hits. It's 12 hours if we're lucky. Jake turned to address the entire camp. Listen up. Everyone. We have a major storm coming, and we need to prepare for the worst. Ben, what do we need to do to make our shelters stormproof? Ben Harper was already thinking like an engineer. We need to reinforce everything, dig drainage ditches to prevent flooding, create sealed areas that can protect against acid rain. The problem is, we have too many people and not enough strong shelter. What about the caves? Asked Veltar. The Vorthok, who had become Amy's medical assistant. The eastern caves are too small, and they flood during heavy rain, Kate explained. The western caves are bigger, but they're 3 miles away through dangerous terrain. What about the southern valley? Suggested Lumera, a luminari, who had learned to work with fire under Pete's guidance. Kate shook her head. That's where the storm will hit first. It'll be the worst place to be. Jake looked around at the worried faces. 8 different species. All looking to the humans for answers? A few weeks ago, these aliens had thought humans were primitive and helpless. Now they were depending on human leadership to survive. All right, Jake said. We're going to have to build our way out of this. Ben, start everyone on reinforcing the main shelters. Lisa, can you use your explosives to create better drainage? Already on it, Lisa Grant replied. Give me 2 hours and I'll have water flowing away from here instead of toward us. We need fires that can burn through anything the storm throws at us. Amy, start preparing for injuries and medical emergencies. Kate, keep watching that storm and tell us when we need to take final shelter. The next few hours turned into the most intense construction project Jake had ever seen. Humans worked alongside aliens, teaching them as they went. It's the Draconis team. used their natural strength to move heavy rocks. The Vorthok team used their crystal bodies to create precise cutting tools. The Luminary team provided light that let everyone work through the growing darkness. Ben Harper had designed a shelter system that was part underground bunker, part fortress. Lisa Grant's controlled explosions had diverted 3 streams away from the camp and created a drainage system that could handle massive amounts of water. Pete Collins had built fire systems that could burn even if they got wet, but it wasn't going to be enough for everyone. Jake, Ben said quietly, "I've run the numbers. We can protect maybe 30 people in the main shelter. The other shelters might hold 10 more if we're lucky. That leaves us short." Jake felt the weight of leadership settle on his shoulders. 43 people were depending on him, and he couldn't save them all. "Commander Zektar," he called. "Can your people fight through a storm to reach the western caves?" "Some of us, yes. But not the injured ones, and not the smaller species." "What if we create a relay system?" Amy suggested. "Strong teams escort the weaker ones to safety, then come back for the next group." "In this storm?" Kate shook her head. "The wind alone will be strong enough to knock down trees. Add acid rain and lightning, and it's a death sentence." Jake looked at the approaching storm. The green clouds now covered half the sky, and the wind was already picking up. They were running out of time and options. "All right, new plan. We're not going to try to save everyone separately. We're going to save everyone together." "How?" Ben asked. "We're going to move the entire camp to the western caves. All of us, right now, before the storm hits." Tar protested. "Some of these people can barely walk normally, let alone hike 3 miles in dangerous weather."
Ow.
"Then we'll carry them," Jake said simply. "Amy, what do you need to make portable medical supplies?" "Lisa, can you create a safe path to the caves?" "Kate, what's the safest route?" The next hour, the camp transformed into a military evacuation. The humans organized everyone into groups based on their mobility and survival skills. The strongest aliens carried the weakest ones. Everyone who could walk carried supplies or equipment. Lisa Grant ran ahead of the group, using small explosions to clear dangerous terrain and mark the safest path. Kate Sullivan moved between the groups, guiding them around hazards and keeping everyone together. Pete Collins maintained mobile fires that provided warmth and light during the journey. Amy Rodriguez moved through the entire convoy, treating injuries and keeping people moving even when they wanted to give up. And Harper had designed portable shelters that could be set up quickly if the storm caught them in the open. The storm hit when they were still half a mile from the caves. The acid rain came first, burning everything it touched. Then came the wind, strong enough to lift smaller aliens off their feet. Lightning struck the ground around them, and the rain turned into a flood that rushed through the valleys. But the humans had planned for this. They had portable coverings that protected against the acid rain. They had rope systems that kept everyone connected in the high winds. They had emergency shelters that could be set up in minutes. Most importantly, they had a plan that no one gave up on. When the Quallen team couldn't walk anymore, the Draconis team carried them. When the Luminary team got lost in the darkness, the Vorthok team used their crystal light to guide them. When the smaller species got swept away by flooding, the humans formed human chains to pull them to safety. They reached the western caves just as the worst of the storm hit. All 43 people alive and together. Jake looked around at the aliens who had followed him through the worst conditions any of them had ever faced. They were tired, scared, and hurt, but they were alive. More than that, they had worked together to save each other. Well, he said to his team, "I think we just changed what this competition means." Outside the caves, the storm raged for 3 more days. Inside, 8 different species shared food, stories, and the knowledge that they had survived something that should have killed them all, and they had done it together. The rescue ships arrived on day 32, find something that had never happened before in the history of the Great Trial. Instead of scattered survivors hiding in different camps, they found all 43 remaining competitors living together in a well-organized community at the Western Caves. Jake Morrison stood at the entrance to greet the Galactic Council representatives. Behind him, humans and aliens worked side by side, sharing the morning meal and planning the day's activities. The sound of laughter echoed from the caves where Ben Harper was teaching a group of young Vorthok how to build water wheels. Captain Morrison said High Council Representative Morden, a being that looked like a walking tree. "We need to discuss what has happened here." "Of course," Jake replied. "What would you like to know?" "According to our observations, you have violated the fundamental nature of the Great Trial. This is supposed to be a competition between species. Instead, you have created some kind of cooperative community." Jake nodded. "That's right. We figured out pretty quickly that competing against each other was just going to get everyone killed. So we decided to compete against the planet instead." "That is not how the trial works," Morden said stiffly. "There must be winners and losers. There must be a champion species that proves their superiority over the others."
"Why?" Jake asked simply.
The question seemed to confuse the council representative. Because that is how it has always been done." "But that's not working, is it?" Jake gestured toward the thriving community behind him. "How many people usually survive the full 30 days? On average, 12 to 15 individuals from the original 72. And how many do we have now?" 43, Morden admitted reluctantly. "So our way saved more than twice as many lives as your way. Doesn't that make it better?" Commander Zektar approached the group. The Draconis leader looked healthier and stronger than he had when he arrived on Kethra Prime. More importantly, he looked confident in a way that didn't depend on having superior weapons or technology. "High Representative Zektar said formally, I wish to make an official statement on behalf of my team and my people." "Proceed, Commander." "The Draconis Republic formally requests that humans be designated as permanent advisors and instructors for all future great trials. We have learned more about true survival in 30 days with humans than we learned in 3 previous victories." Morden looked shocked. "You're requesting that the winners become teachers for your people?" "No," Zektar replied. "I am requesting that the most advanced survival species in the galaxy teach the rest of us what we have forgotten." Other aliens began gathering around the conversation. Veltar the Vorthok stepped forward. "The Vorthok Collective supports this request. Human knowledge of primitive technologies has saved our lives and opened new possibilities for our people." Lumera, the Luminari, floated closer. "The Luminari Council agrees. We have sent word to our homeworld requesting that human teachers come to instruct our young in basic survival skills." One by one, representatives from every surviving species made similar statements. They all wanted humans to teach their people the skills that had once been common knowledge throughout the galaxy. Jake looked at his team. Lisa Grant was showing a group of aliens how to create controlled explosions for construction work. Pete Collins had a crowd around his fire pit, learning to cook food that tasted better than anything they had eaten before. Amy Rodriguez was teaching natural medicine to beings whose own species had forgotten how to heal without advanced technology. Ben Harper had built a workshop where aliens were learning to create tools with their own hands. Kate Sullivan was leading groups on nature walks, teaching them to read weather patterns and animal behavior. "Hi, Representative," Jake said. "I think we need to talk about what the Great Trial is really supposed to accomplish." "It is meant to test which species is strongest," Morden replied. "But what if strength isn't about who can survive alone? What if strength is about who can help others survive too?" Morden was quiet for a long moment, watching the mixed groups of humans and aliens working together. "You're suggesting that we change a tradition that is thousands of years old?" "I'm suggesting that traditions should serve a purpose. If the purpose is to make species stronger, then cooperation works better than competition. Hey, if the purpose is just to follow old rules, then maybe it's time to think about new rules." "The Council will need to discuss this at length," Morden said. "Take all the time you need," Jake replied. "But while you're discussing it, we'll be training the next generation of survivors from every species that wants to learn." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of more ships. Jake recognized the design from the initial transport, but these were much larger vessels. "What are those?" he asked. "Diplomatic ships," Morden explained. "Word of what happened here has reached the homeworlds. Every major species in the galaxy has sent representatives to meet with you." Jake felt a mix of pride and responsibility. "What do they want?" "To understand how you did this, to learn from you, and to invite you to join their exploration missions, their research projects, their colonization efforts. It seems that every species has decided they need humans as partners. Kate Sullivan joined the group, having noticed the new arrivals. Jake, we're getting communication requests from 17 different planets. They're all asking if we can send teams to teach survival skills to their people. And there's more, Amy Rodriguez added, approaching with a communication device. I just got a message from Earth Command. They want us to establish a Galactic Survival Academy. Humans teaching aliens, and aliens teaching humans about their own specialties. Jake looked around at the community they had built on Kethra Prime. 43 beings from 8 different species, all alive and thriving because they had learned to work together instead of against each other. So what happens now? He asked his team. Now we go home, Pete Collins said. And then we come back with more teachers and more students. Looks like we've got a galaxy full of people who want to learn what humans know about survival. We've got a lot to learn from them, too, Ben Harper added. Each species has knowledge and abilities that could help all of us survive better. Jake nodded. The great trial was over, but something much bigger was just beginning. Humans had found their place in the galaxy not by proving they were superior to other species, but by proving they could help other species become better versions of themselves. The rescue ships prepared to take everyone home, but Jake knew they would all be back. Not for competition, but for cooperation. Not to prove who was strongest, but to make everyone stronger. As they lifted off from Kethra Prime, Jake looked down at the planet that had taught them all so much. The caves where they had sheltered from the storm, the valley where they had built their community, the forests where humans and aliens had learned to work together. Ready to change the galaxy? He asked his team. Ready, sir? They replied together, just like they had 30 days ago. But now those words meant something completely different. Now they meant hope.